Hi, Phil Aston here from nowspinning.co.uk, and on this video I'm going to be looking back at a classic album. Well, it's a classic album for me, and it's Mr. Universe by Gillan. We're not going to be just looking at the vinyl album. We're going to be looking at the single, also PR photograph from the time. I'm even wearing the t-shirt, the promo t-shirt from the 79 tour, which was Sleeping on the Job, which actually appeared on the following album. I'm also going to have a look through the tour program from the 5th of October, I think it was, 1979, and of course the remastered CD as well. And I'll flick through these from a different camera view, so you'll be able to see them in more detail. But my relationship with this album and Ian Gillan is quite broad, but also this album means a lot to me. And I think what a lot of people like about my videos is the fact that I don't just go through the stats and the data. There is a kind of emotional connection to them. So when Deep Purple unravelled and gave us, the fans, a whole raft of different bands to follow, from the Ian Gillan Band, Rainbow, Pace and Lord, solo albums from David Coverdale, eventually Whitesnake, Glenn Hughes, etc., even Roger Glover's stuff. There was tons of stuff for us to look at, and of the most inventive members of Deep Purple who went off to do different things, I think I would have to put Ian Gillan at the top of that mountain, if you like, because he has done so many different things and moved away from the template of what you might expect. I know you could say that Pace and Lord was an experiment, but Ian Gillan kept his experiments going for longer. And I think also at that time, he was quite a character, the way he came across. I mean, again, there's no internet, there's no YouTube, there's no social media. You only pick this up from seeing him live and lyrics, really, and word of mouth. So I'd followed him from the Ian Gillan Band, and especially Clear Air Turbulence and the Scarabaeus tour, and I'm going to do a separate video on those. You might find, if you go through, subscribe to me, you'll see in my YouTube channel there is a small video looking at the Ian Gillan Band Clear Air Turbulence program, but I'm going to do a more in-depth one on that. But I felt that when I saw the Scarabaeus tour, and I was at the Birmingham Odeon, and I felt that I was watching the demise of the Ian Gillan Band. The venue was half full, and he didn't seem to be, his heart was in it. The musicians seemed a bit bored, apart from Colin Towns, and I came away thinking, Scarabaeus, it's a more rocky album, but I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to Gillan at this point. Rainbow were just going great guns, and I just felt that Gillan was being left behind, plus Whitesnake had now formed, and they were doing really well. And the next thing I knew about Ian Gillan was he was playing, instead of the Birmingham Odeon, where I saw him the last time, he was playing a small club in Birmingham. And it was, I just felt that, I thought, well, this is it. He's obviously, it's having to play smaller places. At Barbarella's it was. I was just trying to remember where it was. And I went to see him at Barbarella's, and it wasn't the Ian Gillan Band. It started with the Colin Towns keyboard intro, but this wasn't the start of Clear Air Turbulence. This was a totally different track. And of course, the album, which I'm again might do a second video, is the Japanese album, but I'm just going to try and stay focused on Mr. Universe. But basically, that night at Barbarella's was the launch of Gillan, which was such an amazing experience. And of course, that lineup then morphed as Bernie Torme joined, and we had the release of this album, Mr. Universe. And I remember buying it as soon as I could. I'd heard him play a couple of tracks on the Friday Rock Show with Tommy Vance, and I think they might have even been tracks from the Japanese album, but It didn't bother me really, but I'm sure it was things like Message in a Bottle was one of them, and Fighting Man. I just loved it, so I went out and bought it. The album was such a success that the record label couldn't press enough and they went bust. But I managed to see them, as I say, in October 1979, and it was a revelation. You know, Colin Towns playing that keyboard thing in the dark, which was the intro to Second Sight, and then they went straight into Secret of the Dance, which is this speed metal track. There's John McCoy with half his head shaved and the other half not. His sunglasses and his like parachute suit pogoing up and down. There was Bernie Torme looking like a pirate. His long coat and his his makeup and his coloured hair flying around the stage and making his guitar sound like a tortured elephant, but it all fitted, and it was just manic and it was crazy, and it was just what he needed. You got like the attitude of punk going on, and then the energy of the new wave of British heavy metal, and Gillan were right at the front of that, and Gillan himself was just having a ball. I think what I liked about Bernie Torme was and I think he said this himself, that he was a very untidy guitarist. I was in a band myself and playing guitar, and all around me everybody was being Eddie Van Halen, and everything was like mathematically, theoretically precise. And then there was Bernie Torme where it was like, well, that'll do. Or it's just like he'd hit the tremolo arm and the notes would fly in the wrong direction or whatever. And it was like, it still worked. And you've got Colin Towns, who was a studious, very serious composer in amongst all this mayhem. And I think at this point in Gillan's evolution, the fact is that Colin Towns had written all the music really. And tracks like Roller, which is such a fantastic track, isn't it? You know, that it sounds like it's probably the most purplisk track on there. Then, you know, Colin Towns was determined to show that Ian Gillan was a rock singer and could still do it. And that's that track, and at the end when it's got like the riff playing and the chord sequence going down behind it, I just think it's just fantastic. I say She Tears Me Down, it's a brilliant track. Mr. Universe, which is an epic rock song, and again Bernie Torme's guitar solo in that is just, it's like punk version of Jimi Hendrix, isn't it? And the production was so raw, and again everything at this time was like precise and polished. And then Gillan came along and just absorbed all the punk attitude and put it into the sound of their album. And I think there's times in that when even the drums disappear, and the balance is all over the place. But to me, it was fantastic. But of course, the track they brought over from the Japanese album was Fighting Man. And I think it's because I couldn't better it. And this was the Steve Bird on guitar. But I think Fighting Man is one of Ian Gillan's finest performances. It was kind of, to me, replaced Child in Time as being like his signature tune. It's a shame it didn't carry on being part of his on stage life in a way. But I think that, you know, the 7 minutes and 30 seconds odd of just pure brilliance. And there was a sense of watching Gillan back then. I'm not saying there isn't now. I mean, I've got one of his latest albums here. But you felt like he was like you. You could wait backstage, whether for me it was Barbarella's or the Birmingham Odeon, and he would see you and say hello and have a chat and ask you what you thought of the show. He's kind of become more quieter. His in between chat is more kind of reserved now. But back then he was more, he was a real character. So let's have a look at some memorabilia, and we'll go over this a bit more. And the first thing I bought was this single, which was Vengeance, picture sleeve. You can see it's been road worn. It was played a hell of a lot, and I wasn't totally a massive fan of the A side, but what I played the most was the B side, and this kind of conversation. What's going to be on the B side? I don't know. Should we do Smoke on the B side? Yeah, why not? We could mic up a rehearsal gear and do it live. So, and they went to the Newton Arms, had a few beers. Aidan mentions what kind of beer they had and scotch, and then they got back and they did it. And it's about 8 odd minutes long, and it's just absolutely mad. Bernie Torme plays absolutely wild, tremolo-driven, tortured strat like you've never heard in your life. And it was an unusual record because the A side was at 45 RPM and the B side was at 33 RPM. So if you didn't get that right, it was quite an interesting listen. But it still is the most mad version of Smoke on the Water. And I think Gillan has done so many mad versions of Smoke on the Water, from the jazz rock version in the Ian Gillan Band and this almost punk version on this first single. The album itself was, I felt it was a luxurious affair, with the photo, which I'll show you, was also used in the poster in the program. And then the inner sleeve had various live photos from the band, which they did again on Glory Road, really. But I think that all the photos were picked. You can see Gillan's humour here with a horse, Colin Towns, the serious one, and Bernard Torme, the punk-driven rock and roll star, and of course the craziness and unique surreal person that is John McCoy. And this was on the Acrobat label. Unfortunately, the label went bust. But it really was a fantastic record. So I hope you can see that. So this is my original vinyl copy. It was re-released later on, and this was the Fame version with no inner sleeve, so no photographs at all. But this was like the budget version of the album. You've already seen me wearing the t-shirt, which I bought from the gig that I went to see them, but I also got a John McCoy badge as well. And this is the program itself. I'm going to have to fold this out in a different shot, but basically the whole thing was a poster. So there was 2 support bands. There was a speed o-meters, which I cannot remember at all, and there was Samson, who were great bands. That was my first exposure to Bruce Dickinson. Then there was again a huge itinerary and kind of lots of facts and figures and photographs again of the band, and an advert on the back, and the poster, as you can now see here, which was actually on my bedroom wall for quite a while. I also managed to pick up a promo photo, which I think I got from the venue as well. I think they were just giving these out. There's a lot of Walker Print used to do a lot of the promo shots at the time, so very young looking Ian there. And the version to buy is the one that came out with they all join up together, so you see a picture of Gillan on the other side, and these are the Enzel remasters, which I think were done very, very well. And when you take the CD out, they've got like pictures of the single and the centerpiece of the vinyl, and the booklets were all annotated by Ian himself, who gave an introduction to the record. This is December 2006 when he did this, and it had the lyrics and all the facts and figures that you would have had from the vinyl album. And this is why I think this series of, there's the Newton Arms, I think, where they did Smoke on the Water, and then there's the essay looking at the album historically. And I think this is good. Those photographs I showed you in the vinyl album are all replicated in the booklet, so you don't actually miss anything, and in fact the photos are slightly bigger. But yeah, that whole series is superb for the Gillan albums. So that's Mr. Universe by Gillan, and I think of all the Gillan albums, this is the most inventive. This is the one that I play the most. Glory Road comes second, but this is the one to me that really set the stage for Gillan's real comeback into the world of classic rock or heavy metal or classic, whatever you want to call it. This is the one. If you're looking at me going, who's that? Oh, the Deep Purple guy. Give this a spin. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for subscribing and sharing and liking and commenting. I really appreciate it, and thank you for all my patrons and subscribers, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video.